Hello everyone, welcome to my channel CryptoWare, and today I am going to give you an overview of how to go ahead with different tools for different kinds of file types. So what your approach should be. I'll give you an idea of different tools that I prefer and some tools that you may also use. It does not have to be necessarily the tools that I'm currently using, but I'll be showing what your approach can be through this video. So let's get started. So here I'm using Remnux Linux. And the first thing that whenever you are getting a file, any kind of malicious file, the first thing that you try to do is go to virus total. You may either try from here or you may directly go to VT. What do I mean by trying from here is some commands that I'll be running over here. I'll be running it later on. But as you remember, in my previous videos, I have also explained how you can download different malware samples from the Zoo GitHub repository. There are other malware samples also that you can download from any.run. There are multiple options available. I actually gave you an idea of from where you may download those samples or what you may approach. But yes, it is completely up to you. Like if you can find some samples through blogs as well, whenever they're explaining different topics or different analysis of malware samples, they also give you a hash and you can download it directly from different platforms. Like if you have an account in VT, like Virus Total, if uh, you have a paid account over there, then you can actually download. Otherwise, any.run, the Zoo, these are very well, like you can download malware samples from there also. So now, as I had mentioned in the previous, in my previous video as well, you can download the GitHub repository from here. You can directly clone it. We'll just check any of the malware samples and we'll see what we are going to do, how we are going to go ahead with it. So as I cloned, I'll simply write git clone and paste it over here. Okay, so we already have a repository over here. Yes, so we already have. So let's go there. Yes, so from here you can go to the malware. You can go to binaries. You can completely explore what you are, what you are willing to check, what kind of samples you want to see. Today we'll go ahead with a Linux malware sample or a JavaScript. So from here, we can actually understand the way they have created this repository. They have mentioned the file types in the beginning itself. But now a lot of times you directly get the hash of a file and you don't know what kind of sample is it, what is it, how would you like to go ahead with it. Unless you understand the file type, what kind of tools are you going to use for that? So for example, let's start with this Linux. Yes, so you can see that there is MD5 password also. So it seems that this is a compressed file and the password is given here. So we can directly check the password. What is it? It's infected. So most of the time, whenever you're downloading a malware sample, its password is infected unless we are customizing the password by ourselves while we are, compressing the samples. So I'll simply unzip. And once it asks for password, we put the password. So let's move to that location. And we can see that there are a number of things over here present. It's Java, some CV that it is trying to exploit. So here in today's video, we are not going to exploit anything. We are not going to do anything. We are just trying to understand the tools that we are going to use. Also, since this is a different kind of sample, that does not necessarily mean that you have to, use only those kinds of tools. I'll also give you an idea of different tools that we are going to use. And whenever we are, trying to analyze those samples, so at those during those times also, we'll be checking all those tools out in a better way. For example, previously I've given you an idea of how you can use Olidum for OLE files. Then I moved ahead with the PDF files. So during those file analysis, I'll be explaining the tools a bit more. But currently, I am just focusing on your approach, on understanding the approach. So this definitely looks like a hash. You can also create hash by yourself, not by yourself. Of course, there are tools for that. But the first thing that you can do is either you can upload the file sample in VirusTotal, or you may use the hash. We'll try both the things. So let's go to VirusTotal. I'll put the hash over here. So I'm completely unable. I don't have any idea currently what malware sample is it. So from here, I'm going to understand. So yes, this is an ELF file. It also tells you the type of file it is. It gives you how many scanners have already detected it. Also, let's start with another thing, that in case you are unable to understand the file sample, getting the hash of the file, you may directly upload the file too. So we'll just go to the location and upload. So if you're in your company, if you're working on malware analysis and everything, then those samples that you may get, it is not recommended to, upload the samples directly. But what you may try to do is you may find the hash MD5 or SHA-256, any hash that you may get, and you can directly figure out, you can directly add the hash over there and you can find the details. You don't have to upload the sample. So let's see. This looks like the one. Yeah. Okay. So this is a different one, and this also gives you a lot of results, and this is an exe file. So there were different files. The hash was of this file, the Linux one, and I chose this one, which was an exe file. So now the VirusTotal already gives you an idea that yes, this is malicious. So you may either understand, you can get an idea that no, we do not have to execute it as of now. But we will go ahead with the basic static analysis part for understanding the file types. We'll see and understand the file types of all these three files right now. So file is the very, very basic and important command. I have explained it before as well. So you can simply use the file command to understand the file type. So it tells you that this is an ELF file, which we found from the VirusTotal. We'll check this one now. It's a zip file. So this is an archived file. So the next thing that we can do is unzip it and let's see. Okay. So we see that it has unzipped everything over here itself. So it's a Java file. Okay, let's move ahead with the final one, which was this one. So this is an executable file. So I mentioned the file that we uploaded. So that was an executable file. Now you have understand that what are these different file types. The next thing would be a very simplest thing, like understanding what all strings are they using to get more idea. Is there any URL? Is there any kind of command that they are trying to execute? And of course, to be honest, a non-malicious file will also be having some commands. A non-malicious file will also be having some URLs depending upon what kind of, for what intention it was made. But you have to understand that what kind of URL that particular file is trying to connect to, or what kind of commands. Is it really important for that specific file to run those commands? Because there are some commands that lead to creation of a separate thread, a different kind of thread that initiates another process. So does that file actually require creation of another process? Does it actually require to make changes to the registry keys, especially in case of Windows? So these are certain things that you have to try understanding while analyzing these. So strings is another tool that you may use for that. So I'll simply use the strings command and this file. You can simply copy paste, or you can, use your tab option, whichever is more comfortable for you. So you can see the strings command gives you some information, some strings, some value, some text that is quite readable for you. So you can see that this is some libraries that it is using, and it is quite common for any kind of executables or binaries to use libraries. But you have to understand what kind of libraries it is trying to have access to. You can see that there is something called inject load, which can be suspicious. Like, what is it trying to inject? Does this actually mean injecting something over there? Inject do, you can see over here as print f check. We are not trying to understand what is it, but I'm just giving you an approach, towards checking a malware sample, if it is malicious or not. So you can see connect, get host by name. So somewhere while running this sample might actually be trying to know the host name of the device that we are using. Since the usage of socket gives you an idea that maybe it is trying to make connection to some server. Send and receive also gives you an idea of there's something that is being sent. Now, these things may be a rabbit hole as well. If you're a security professional or security enthusiast, you must have heard this term rabbit hole a lot. So it is just, to divert your mind and all the energy to some other kind of things while analyzing a simple process, so that you overlook the actual problem or the actual malicious activity that is happening over here. So maybe, for example, while you are trying to perform, you're trying to find a vulnerability or exploit a particular machine, for example. And in that case, there are a lot of things that you have come across during the enumeration phase. And in those times, instead of getting into the actual issue, you end up looking at other issues, which are actually rabbit holes, and they do not do anything. You end up to nothing. But there are actual exploits that you overlook because of all those things. So a lot of times these things are there to divert the analyst's or researcher's mind to another issue that is not even an issue, but to divert them from the actual problem that is creating all the malicious behavior. So it may define that, but it's not necessary. You do need to analyze each of them. You can see set cookie key, session key generation. Why do we need to have all these things? So the strings command is actually giving you some idea of maybe functions, some text. A lot of times you end up getting some passwords and keys as well through this command. So yeah. So we'll try to use the strings command against that exe file too. So just let me check what was the name of that file, this one. Okay, so from here also we can see, so it's there's some padding that is talking about. So we are not sure, we're just looking at it. So a lot of times, for example, suppose you're using Windows, and of course, Windows do have these commands too. You can run strings over there also, but you can use some hex editor kind of tools, which give you some more details, and through the magic bytes, you can get to understand the actual file type. Now, what is a magic byte? So the first few strings define if it is define the file types, and using that only this file command gives you an idea of the file type. So you can use hex editors for that as well, or you can use simply these commands which will directly give you an idea of the kind of file it is. So you can see the DLL files that it is using, some processes that it is operations, sorry, that it is trying to use. These are some interesting write file. So this is something that seems to be suspicious. Like, what is it writing? Maybe is it trying to modify some files, or is it trying to, create something and create a file and write something to that particular file? You can see all these selection, load library. So is it trying to load some kind of library? Is debugger present? So this is something very interesting. And this malware maybe is trying to check if there is this malware is being run in a debugger, because while using debugger, we may try to change or perform some modification to that code, because a lot of times these malware samples do not run in a sandboxed environment. So to bypass that, they have this is debugger present function. And while debugging, we have to again remove this function, or make some changes so that this detection can be bypassed. So we can see that it is checking if it is running in a debugger or it is being analyzed, the sample is being analyzed or not. So that is something very suspicious. Okay, these are some random strings. You can see some, it looks like it is trying to demand. So command.exe gives you an idea of maybe it is trying to run some command. We are not sure because we do not see the command, or maybe it was, since there were too many strings, we did not check it. So these two are very important tools that you may use in the beginning, or you may use another hex editor, which will give you an idea of the kind of files. So once you understand the kind of files, the first thing, it helps you in analyzing those files in a better way. Because you cannot randomly go about with running tools after tools, because every kind of file type requires different kind of tools and different procedures for static and dynamic analysis. Of course, the dynamic analysis part revolve around running that uh, particular file. But what if you don't know the file type? You cannot execute an ELF file in a PE file, in a Windows file, or you cannot execute an exe file in a Linux file. Although these things are possible, you do require some other tools for that too. But unless you understand, so even for using that particular tool, for example, if you want to run an exe file in a Linux environment, you need to know the name of the tool also. So Wine is the tool that you may use for that. So you have to be knowing all those things. And for knowing all those things, you need to know what file type it is. Now let's get to the example of different types of files that we are mostly considering for analyzing. One is a document file type, which can be an XML format. Nowadays, open XML format. Nowadays, the open XML formats, the docx kind of files, are a kind of zip files. So when you're checking the header of that particular file, when you're checking to understand the file type, it will tell you through its magic byte that it is a compressed file, it is a zip file. It is although a docx file, but it would be a zip file. So you have to unzip it and then analyze the contents. So unzipping in something is a very common tool that you may be aware of. WinRAR, you can use 7Z, you can use over here, you can use unzip. There are a number of tools that you may use. Now for another document kind of file that you may use is OLE, which I've already mentioned in my previous video. So there are OLE dump that I have used previously. I'll share the link in the description below where I've mentioned this tool and I've used this tool for analyzing. Now, these OLIDUM files or doc files may have macros. So for understanding or reading those macros, these macros are mostly written in clear text, which is used in Visual Basic format. And you may use uh, any kind of text editor, maybe Visual Studio you can use. You may use Notepad plus plus, you may use Sublime Text, whichever text editor is comfortable for you. You may use all those kinds of text editors. You can also use simply Notepad, but it won't be very easy. Why we prefer to use Visual Studio, or why do we prefer to use uh, Visual Studio or Sublime or Notepad plus plus? Because they give you a very good visualization of the piece of code. So you can define the kind of language that the code is using, and based on that, it makes all the changes and it helps you analyzing the code in a better way, in an easier way, which we have done previously. Now, and yes, this file comes as in a .x extension, doc extension. Most of the time, of course, there are no extensions a lot of time, and you have to analyze them using file command or any hex editor to understand the file type. And this is one of the reasons why you need to know the file type before analyzing anything. Another document file is PDF that we are currently analyzing, and I'll be, using this. I'll be analyzing some more PDF files in my upcoming videos that I'll be sharing in the next week. So there's some tools that you can use is PDF ID. Some is PDF. Sorry for the spelling. PDF. There's some more tools also. If you try to check from here, Remnux, these are all present over here. You can see some of them. PDF ID that I was mentioning. PDF parser, which you can use. Okay, so PDF is not here. So here it is. For OLIDUM, for OLI files, sorry. If you're using some other kind of Linux, you may need to install the OLI tools. These are all open source. You do not have to, pay for anything. So you can see that Oli dump is one that I was explaining. Oli ID is something that you may use. Oli object, Oli VBA. For example, if you want to understand the macros or extract, you can extract the macros from here. Also, we have done it previously, but these are more helpful. These are different these are different tools that make you analyzing the samples in an easier way. So apart from OLE, there are other files also, file types also, which are like ELF file. For ELF, most of the time you can for different tools, ELF reader, ELF parser. So I am not running these tools right now because while I'll be analyzing the samples, the respective samples of these file types, at that time I'll explain the tools in a better way. So right now, I'm just giving you an idea of your approach towards understanding different file types and how you can, what would be the next step. So from here, you have passed the ELF file and then you may understand what is it. Now let's try to see if we are using ELF parser, then how to use it. Different tools may have different ways to be used. We are just checking, even I have no idea how is it going to do it. So I'm just checking it with you. We'll go into the malware. We'll look for the sample that we checked just now. Let me check the name. Yeah, this one. This is the one. Okay, so it gave you some idea of, you see, you can get MD5 hash from here as well. Family is undetermined. That is completely fine. You can check the header, little Indian format that it is using, some other headers that it is using. If you're not getting into too much details, we'll be analyzing them separately in the separate videos. There is some exec function that it is using, and if it is trying to execute something, we have to understand that because there's a load that is something that is trying to use. And it is completely fine if you don't know what is it, how is it to be done. You always have Google for that. So you don't have to think a lot about it. These are completely open source. Some symbols that it has used. We saw some of them in the string section also. So from here also you can get an idea of the kind of functions that it has used. Yes, you can see a lot of function symbols that it is used, capabilities. We are just checking. So see, so there are some network functions. As I mentioned that maybe it was trying to, connect to some URL to some link. Yes, but we did not find any URL. We will be able to find those URLs by analyzing the sample more. But a lot of times you may find those URLs using the strings command itself. File functions, it is opening a file, it is closing a file. But as of now, we see that it is opening a file. It is trying to make a connection to some link. So maybe that link is then getting downloaded, but we do not see any function as such that is, making it clear for us that yes, it is downloading something and then it is getting it is getting executed. Although we saw that exec function. So network functions, information gathering. So out of these suspicious numbering score, they have given it a score of 5. So maybe since this is the malware might be using a lot more functions. Maybe this malware is having more entropy. Maybe it is a packed one, so we are not able to see a lot of information related to it. Now, what do I mean by entropy? I did explain it in my previous videos. So entropy defines the obfuscation level of a particular file. So the malware authors do not want the malware samples that they're writing to be very easy enough for you to, debug it or analyze it. So they deobfuscate the code so that it becomes unreadable for you to analyze the code, what is exactly happening. So that is determined, or that is the kind of, um, that is a kind of way or metric. Entropy is that particular metric to define how much deobfuscated or, sorry, how much packed that malware is. Not deobfuscated, obfuscated, how much packed that particular malware is. Now, another very common sample that we will be using is PE samples, which are portable executable. And we have started analyzing samples using PE files itself. So we will be analyzing them also. But for PE, we need to have PE Studio or all the PE tools that we need. And preferably, you may perform the static analysis in a Windows environment, which I have shown you how you can install Flare VM. So I'll share the description and the link below for that too, so that you may be all aware of how to install Flare VM in Windows 10. And there itself, see, that's PE check. Let's see how PE check can be used. I'm simply writing it. It should be giving me some error, or maybe it should be asking for some details. If it is not, let's try again. PE dump, PE check. Mostly for analyzing PE files, even for static analysis, I'm talking about .exe, .msi, .dll. Even for statically analyzing those files, we'll be using Windows machine, the Flare VM, not the Linux one. Linux ones would be for static analysis of document files, for ELF files, of course, other kinds of binaries, Java files, every kind of file that we may be using. So let's try some other tools. Okay, yeah, pscan is something. So even I am actually going through these tools, the PE-based tools, right now along with you, because I preferably use Windows for analyzing PE files. But even if you want to, analyze a PE file, just static analysis, or want to get some basic details about that particular file, you may do it over here because you are anyway not running that particular file. So let's run. What was the name of that file? Let's see. File entropy is high. As I mentioned, it is probably packed. So for analyzing this file, we would need to unpack this. How are we going to unpack this would come at a bit of a later stage because that would be a bit more advanced. But yes, we will be analyzing those kinds of files too. Since this is packed, we cannot find a lot of information related to that. And we have to probably unpack it. There are some tools to unpack, but for unpacking a malware, we'll have a separate video. So today's video is mostly focused on the tools and your approach towards analyzing, because I have been asked this question a lot of times, and thank you so much for your feedback and asking these questions. So what kind of tools that we use? You cannot have a separate list of tools because different tools are used for different file types. There's some common for some common file types that we will be analyzing. I have mentioned the tools that I'll be using. So, and how am I going to use them? So while analyzing those malware samples, I'll be giving you an idea of that particular tools. When we'll move ahead with the advanced part, there you'll be using those tools in further steps also. So don't worry about all those things. For static analysis, this is a very simple approach. So since you have understood this is packed, so the next step would be unpacking this malware. Or if you want to perform dynamic analysis, you may run this malware into the VM machine with all the setup that I've given you previously. For PE files, I did give you all the setup. I'll share the link in the description as well. So you can go ahead, try analyzing. You can see how it is, working. How is it running? So from dynamic analysis, you'll get more idea of the kind of URLs maybe it is trying to connect to, maybe the commands, the registry key changes since it is a PE file. So you'll get an idea of all those things too. So as we move ahead with different file types, we'll be exploring those specific tools in a more specific way. So these are some ideas how you can move ahead. I'll give you another thing that I would like to mention is any.run. So apart from VirusTotal, any.run is another very interesting platform. You can join for free. They give you a free Windows machine, just one Windows machine though, where you can upload the sample and check how it is dynamically and analyzing, and it gives you an entire report of what is that particular sample doing. So for your initial phase of learning, you may go ahead with that. Let's try and check that too. Let's see. So you can see that how, so this is the URL that you may directly, run to. Make sure that you have logged in. You need to create an account. You can have a free account. So if I want to run that particular PE file, for example, that I was showing you, we may check. Also, you can see that how malware hunting with live access, you can explore it entirely. So these are some interesting platforms. So even if you're new and, very interested in malware analysis, you may go, check out these platforms, VirusTotal, any.run. These two are specifically that I use. And in fact, from any.run, you may download samples that you want to work on some recent samples maybe, and you can just check their file headers and analyze, or if you have found any samples, you can just run them in this machine that I'll be showing you how you can do from any.run. And that will give you a very great idea of how to go ahead and what is actually happening over there. So you go to new task. You can either type or copy the URL. See, the free one is Windows 7 and it would be a public task. So if you want to, get a subscribed one, you have to pay for it to have access to other machines too. So we'll just upload that particular sample that we saw, the Windows sample, and we'll see how is it working. Yeah, here is it. And you can randomly choose any file type. That would not be an issue. So here you can see how is it running. It will give you all the details of the entire thing, how it is running over here. So you can see that there are some exe files. We knew that this was a packed file, packed sample, and cmd.exe, we saw it in the strings and we got an idea that maybe it is trying to run some command, but we could not see it through static analysis. To get more information statically, you do have to unpack the file. And if you are not willing to do it, you can directly do dynamic analysis and see all the kind of information. So this is the exe file. There's another exe. There's explorer.exe. This is the command. So it is running a .bat file. Then this was an embedded file, winmol or winmail.exe, dwm.exe. So you can see some of the information from here. So we get an entire report. So whenever you are checking see, there are a number of public tasks. So you may also go and check out the other public tasks and you can get sample and try analyzing on your own. You can check the IOCs. So you will get some more information about what IOCs are. You can restart, text report, process graph, attack matrix, export. So you can get all kinds of details. It's a PE file we already knew. So from here you get an idea of how you can move ahead with simple analyzing of a malware sample. Now the thing is, for different samples, there are different tools, and while analyzing each and every sample, I'll be going ahead with explaining those tools a bit more. Each and every tool will be used according to the kind of malware sample that we are analyzing at that time. So when we move ahead with a bit of more advanced malware samples, we'll be using some more tools. You may use some other tools of your choice too. The video or the session is not like that you have to specifically use these tools. There are a number of different kinds of tools that you can use. You may do your own research. You may start with analyzing these samples with the tools that I have mentioned, and later on you may you may switch to some other tools, whichever you are comfortable in. So that's it for this video today. And in the next video, I'll be analyzing the further samples of the PDF file type that we had started with in the previous video. And there I'll be using the tool in a better way, the mentioned tools for analyzing PDF files. And thank you so much. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to my channel and keep supporting.